said laughingly the other day, Phil, the stuff we do is like spiritual chemotherapy, meaning it's painful, but it works. It's painful, but it works. It's killing off what's not true to discover what is true. But to do that, you have to be aware that you're causing your own problems. And there are going to be some people that are going to be in their mind. And what do you mean causing my problems? I don't cause my problems. If my husband was different, blah, 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 if I was wanting as much money as Fred, or, if I had a podcast like Wing, or, that guy's an idiot, right? And the solution is not in the outside world. It's in the inside world, and doing the work that you need to do to get rid of that part of you that thinks you actually need to have an outside purpose to be fulfilled. Because I don't think there's anybody that ever got what they want that achieved ultimate long-lasting fulfillment.
Hello, my name is Wing, and welcome to A Work in Purpose. Do you see people who are living their purpose and wondering to yourself, how did they get there? Are you wondering, what is your purpose too? Me too. That is why I am inviting you to join me on this journey. A Work in Purpose is our podcast for igniting and reaching our purpose together. Each week, I'll be sharing a podcast episode of me interviewing people from all walks of life who are working towards some kind of purpose, whether it is with their career, volunteering, creativity, spiritual practices, or just how they approach everyday life. We'll dive deep into their stories to uncover what obstacles they had to overcome to reach their purpose today. By hearing their stories, I hope you will learn from their journey and be inspired so you too can become a work in purpose. Our guest this episode, Phil Lee, led a very successful career coaching business leaders for decades as a performance coach and motivational speaker. Yet despite his success, he found happiness to be elusive and never long-lasting, which set him off to chase after the next thing, one after another, that was supposed to make him happy. However, a few years ago, he finally decided to do something differently and embarked on a deep inner work journey. Based on the teachings of Eckhart Tolle, one of the most popular spiritual teachers and authors today, with his top-selling books, The Power of Now and A New Earth. In this episode, we dive deep into Eckhart's teaching of letting go of our ego and realizing that we are not our thoughts, nor our emotions, nor our bodies, and instead to recognize that we are the awareness behind our thoughts, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Listen to this fascinating episode to hear Phil's insights on what is our real purpose here, how can we find deep, long-lasting happiness, and hear his experience of going through his profound spiritual journey and how you can apply his learnings to your journey as well. Hello, Phil Lee. Welcome to A Work in Purpose podcast. I'm so excited to have you on.
Wing, I am incredibly blessed and grateful for you asking me to be on. So thanks. I'm looking forward to having a chat with you and sharing some ideas that have helped me with your listeners.
Great. So know that since 2004, you were a successful sales and leadership coach and motivational speaker. You were speaking in front of thousands of business people. Then around like 4 or 5 years ago, you had this aha moment to your true purpose. What did you discover was your true purpose then?
That's a really good question. So to try to keep it short, I started a personal development journey, when I was about 20. The first book I read was by Dr. Wayne Dyer's Your Erroneous Zones. I'm 66 now. And, fundamentally, I'd had some challenging issues in my earlier life, and I was really trying to sort it out, get answers to some of the very big questions. I'm a very curious person. I read a lot of stuff. And so I bought into the usual sort of personal development type of things that, the purpose of your life, pick the purpose of your life. What's the purpose of your life, And, the purpose of my life is to help others. Or the purpose of my life is to be a successful speaker and share my message. Or the purpose of my life is to make a lot of money and have a wonderful lifestyle and be financially free so that I can do anything I like whenever I like. And so I joined that bandwagon, and there's plenty of people out there there's a lot of books and a lot of, good people out there that are teaching that stuff. And I bought into that fully, and subsequently I worked really hard and developed myself. So my purpose at that time was, I wanted to have a successful business and a nice family and live in a nice place and have a great lifestyle. And that was pretty much it, and make a difference. And so I did that, and thankfully I was reasonably successful doing that. And so I was in IT, and I started an IT business, which was successful. At the age of 50, and through circumstance and wanting change, but also needing to change because the industry changed, and I wasn't willing to go with it. I decided, like, what do I really want to do? This is at 50 years of age. What do I really want to do? I want to make a difference. I want to be a speaker. Yeah. And I want to be in a rock and roll band. It's true. So I just completely focused on that and focused my energies into learning how to become a speaker, trainer, and coach, and working with businesses around helping them with, help them become more effective at selling. And selling is fundamentally communication, and there's a lot of mindset involved. So that was great. It really suited me. There's a lot of personal growth. You can't be more successful in business or sales without growing personally. So that was really great. And I became, reasonably successful at being a speaker and a coach and a trainer and that sort of thing. And I really enjoyed it. I immersed myself in it. But I noticed after a while, once that I'd immersed myself in it, I was getting some great results with some of the people that I worked with. And I found that typically if I picked them really well and they were really sincere and they were really committed and they had really good reasons, that I could substantially help them. And but after a while, I sort of started thinking, I don't really know if there's something still missing. And everything throughout my life, I said to you earlier, if I tick down, when I was about 20 in my early 20s, what I wanted from life, I don't want to boast, but I could pretty much tick every box right now. But still, why aren't I happy? I'm not unhappy, and life was giving me ups and downs as it normally does. And some things were going well, and then some things would stop going well. And I'm like, oh, life was like being I was riding a surfboard, like it was, whoa, some minutes it's a really great smooth ride, and other times, wow, I can't handle these waves. And I had a situation, which was not the first time in my life. Some people will resonate with this. I had a situation in my life. It was sort of stopped me in my tracks. It was a business thing. And I was like, really, I was stuck. I didn't, it was something I didn't want to happen, and it happened, and I was stuck. And for a number of years, I just couldn't, really, I was too focused on my thoughts about it. I mean, we talked about Eckhart Tolle earlier. I was too focused about my thoughts about it and trying to figure everything out in my mind, and just not being able to do that, and being scared about not wanting to make this move and being scared about making that move. And very fortunately for me, I watched an interview. By the way, I'd read The Power of Now and A New Earth and all that sort of stuff, and a number of those books. It had resonated with me, but I hadn't done anything about it really. So I could say, I really read The Power of Now, but I wasn't living the power of now. I wasn't living as a spiritual being. But I had read that stuff. And then I saw an interview by Oprah with a guy called Michael Singer, as an American guy, and it just really impressed me, what he had to say and a bit about his story. So I went and bought his book, and it just the first couple of chapters just blew me away. And the first chapter is called The Voice Inside Your Head. Now, I realized after investigating that and reading others and going on that journey and practicing it, starting to practice it, that all the answers are inside. So, I was driving myself nuts with this whole mental chatter and trying to figure out where I was. And then, and Michael Singer actually says, the purpose of your life is not to get what you want. Now, most people are going to stop right here. What do you mean not get what I want? Because really, I know what I want. I've sat there and I've thought about it, and I've set my big, hairy, audacious goals, and I know what's going to make me happy. But the bottom line is, and I can talk from experience, that you think that's going to make you happy, and it gives you a focus to working towards someone. But when you get it, it doesn't take long before you're somewhat dissatisfied and looking for something else. Now, you don't need me to prove that, but I mean, I don't like bringing this one up, but just look at the marriage statistics. I mean, why would people get it in the first place if at least 50% knew that at, some stage in the future, they were going to end up not liking each other?
Right, yeah.
So, the purpose of my life is to get married and have kids. Well, really, does that do it for you? For some people would say, yeah, it does, but very few. And so essentially, the purpose of your life is to let go. And, Eckhart talks about this, is to find your true self. And that's, this is now where it becomes spiritual, is to find your true self. And your true self is not about making more money, although it's nice to have money. It's not about, who you marry, although it's nice to marry the right, nice person. It's not about not having any of those things, but knowing that your true self is basically the highest state there is. And when you get in touch with your true self, and some people call it consciousness, some people call it energy, that's the natural state of bliss and joy. So, at 66, I can say my purpose of my life is to let go of the part of me that is having a problem with creation. That is the moment in front of me, which is what is happening in front of me. Because, think about it, it's not, well, maybe it is rocket science, but this moment, we're talking to in front of each other. This moment is essentially taken, according to cosmologists and physicists, it's essentially taken around 13.8 billion years to get here. Mm. And yes, we contacted each other, and yes, I saw your post. But, there's an unfathomable, infinite number of things that had to lead up to that, of which you and I had no control over whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So essentially, the whole thing is a miracle, but we're trying to find the miracle. Mm-hmm. The miracle's right in front of us. So the purpose of my life is to do the work that I do, the spiritual work that I do. Doesn't mean I stop living. I've got a wife, I've got wonderful kids. I live in a lovely house in a beautiful part of Sydney where I live, 15 minutes walk to Bondi Beach, 15 minutes walk to Sydney Harbour. So I'm very blessed, very, very lucky. But the purpose of my life really is to let go of all this lower self that needs, wants, likes, doesn't like, and judges this moment that's taken literally 13.8 billion years to get here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that, I can experience just the joy of being.
That's great. So for those who don't really know much about Eckhart Tolle or his teachings about the ego and letting it go, can you explain to us what is the ego and why should we let it go?
Okay, well, that's a really good question. So I guess the way that Eckhart describes the ego is the mind-made self. So I'll try to keep it really simple if I can. We have had experiences throughout our life, and you've probably heard Albert Einstein's equation E equals mc squared. Mm-hmm. Everything is energy. Okay, so physicists have explained to us and told us that everything is energy, including experience. Every experience has an energy. Okay, and so what happens is we have experiences, and some people will talk about past lives, but I don't because I'm not qualified to do that, but some people would, that we take on the energy of experiences, particularly the ones that we couldn't handle, and instead of allowing the energy of the experience to pass through us, it stays. So if something happened, like I remember I had a big love relationship when I was about 19, 20. I thought I was madly in love with the girl. She dumped me. That affected me for years. And particularly, actually knocked me for a 6. And what had happened was I was just not accepting of the experience. Now, there are so many experiences that we are accepting of. They're minor things in our worlds, but things that don't bother you, you're fully accepting of. And you essentially allow the energy of the experience to pass through you. So if we're having a pleasant exchange, the energy of the experience is just passing through. There's nothing to hold on to. If I said something that upset you, it might change, like vice versa. So the bottom line is we hold on to these experiences, and they're mostly unpleasant, but some of them are pleasant, which is why we chase things, because we think that's the answer. But essentially, we hold on to these experiences and that we either like something or we don't like something. So we develop personal preferences. And the mind has been given the job of trying to get what we want that pleases us and avoid what we don't want that doesn't please us. And so essentially the mind is on the job 24/7, and it's driving us nuts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now the Spirituality 101, whether it's Eckhart or any other spiritual teacher, is you have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You have emotions, but you are not your emotions. The same as there's essentially only 3 ways we take in the world. One is through our perception of the outside world. The second way is through our thoughts. And the third way is through our emotions that we experience generally around the heart area. They are the three things that there they are. And we, of course, take in through our five senses, but that's how we're picking up stimuli, through our five senses. So if you said something that upset me, my sense of hearing would interpret that. It would come in. If it bothered me because sometime in the past something like you said triggered me, it's going to trigger me again. So keeping it very simple. If you are out there listening to this and you are having trouble with something, anything, it's because of your thoughts and your emotions. But essentially, the story your mind is creating around those thoughts. So the first thing to recognize is you are not those thoughts. You have a body, but you're not the body, but you have one. We're housed in a body that has senses. And you are not your emotions, although you experience them. So someone might say, Phil, what are you talking about? Then if I'm not my thoughts, and that's the big mistake we all make, is we identify with our thoughts, the pleasant ones and the unpleasant ones. That's why a lot of us can't sleep, because it's still going. And hang on, why would you get your mind going at night while you're trying to sleep? It's why would you do that? Because you're not sleeping, so you're feeling crap when you wake up. The fact is you're not doing it. It's just happening by itself.
Right.
It's compulsive. So the big takeaway from that question, Wing, is we're not our thoughts, although we have them. We're not our emotions, although we experience them. We're not our body, although, yes, we experience that too, and it's a very useful vehicle. Then who are we? We are the one, the entity. We are the one, what they call, the one who notices those things. They call it, Eckhart calls it, it's consciousness or the witness or the observer. There's a lot of different names for it. The higher self or the true self. But essentially, and I love this phrase, and I didn't make it up. I just can't remember who did, a French priest in the late 1800s. I can't remember his name. But he said, we are not human beings having the occasional spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And therein lies the problem. So the power of now, essentially, is about not just recognizing that you are a spiritual being and you are just in this miraculous moment and you are part of this moment, right? You're just part of this moment. You're just basically witnessing this moment. It's about doing the work to release what is actually stopping us feeling that and experiencing that. And essentially what is stopping us feeling and experiencing that joy, because it is utter pure joy, is identification with mind, thought, and body.
So
does that make sense?
Yeah. So I feel like many people might understand what you're talking about on an intellectual level. Personally, until I experienced it for myself on a deep level, it really didn't sink in, how profound of a change this seemingly simple shift can make. So how do you get others to truly understand how amazing it is to let the ego go?
Well, as I said a bit earlier, the first thing is you've got to want to. You have to come to a point. I mean, and it's experiential. So it's not a belief system. It's experiential. You can't teach it. You can, but you have to experience it to know it. So when I first read The Power of Now, I don't know how many years ago, it was quite a few years ago, it appealed to me. I sort of got it intellectually, but I wasn't experiencing it. And it's only since I put, over 4 years of daily work into the practice, into spiritual practice, that I can now pick up The Power of Now and read 3 lines and it'll stop me in my tracks because I get it. I've experienced it. I've experienced the depth of the teaching, and you can't do that just by reading a book.
Yeah.
So firstly, for anyone who's interested, who gets this, and some people, you get it. Jesus famously said, "You have to die to be reborn." Now, he wasn't talking about dying physically. He was talking about shedding or getting rid of that egoic part of you, body, mind. Is that identification with your ego, which is essentially attachment to mind, body, and emotion, particularly the mind, because ego is sort of playing this game that, it's all about, and that's where I started earlier on about the personal development, personal growth, particularly in the Western world. Now, it's no coincidence at all. Most of these teachings came out of the East, right? In the Western world, it's all about form. It's all about creation. It's all about, making stuff. It's all about trying to figure stuff out, which is really great, but it's too much of a focus on materialism. So you only get this stuff when you realize that materialism is nice to have. And don't get me wrong, we wouldn't have been able to develop a vaccine as quickly if there wasn't, a buck in it and, blah, blah, blah for COVID. So that's a really great thing. But, we've moved away. We've lost the bliss and the joy of just being. So you firstly have to get that your mind is not really working for you most of the time. Yes, it's a great tool, and applied the right way, it can develop vaccines, it can create computers, it can help us use computers. But most of the time, it's just a neurotic vocalizing mechanism inside of your head.
I like that.
Most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with me? You agree with me?
Oh,
so
yeah.
You've got to get that first. You've got to get that first. Now, my wife doesn't get that. And I throw stuff around every now and again, and she's quite resistant to it. Her ego is quite resistant to it.
Mm-hmm.
And she just doesn't want to let go, because the ego doesn't want to let go. The ego is very powerful. It's an entity in itself. It's not who you are, but it is a part of you. It's not your true nature, but it is a part of you. Rupert Spira is a very good teacher that I follow, calls it the finite self or the separate self, and it's very strong. And essentially, ego is all about, what other people think of you, what you do, security, control. Essentially, that's what it's about. What do people think of me? Security and control. And that's because the ego is scared. As I said, it goes back to those past experiences that we had that we couldn't handle, and the energy of those experiences is still living, and it's still driving that, essentially. So you firstly, really got to be able to get 101 that, yes, you have thoughts. Most of you are driving the nuts, and the good news is they're not you, but you're focused on them, right? You, as the awareness, are focused on those thoughts, okay? And the second thing is, not everybody's ready for this, but you're either ready for change or you're not. And you can dabble, and there's nothing wrong with that. But essentially, I mentioned to you in my little group, one of the participants is a very bright marketing lady, essential, and she's done a lot of spiritual work prior to, meeting me and stuff. And she said, laughingly the other day, Phil, the stuff we do is like spiritual chemotherapy, meaning it's painful, but it works. It's painful, but it works. It's killing off what's not true to discover what is true. But to do that, you have to be aware that you're causing your own problems. And there are going to be some people that are going to be in their mind. And what do you mean causing my problems? I don't cause my problems. If my husband was different, if I was wanting as much money as Fred, or, if I had a podcast like Wing, or, that guy's an idiot, right? And the solution is not in the outside world. It's in the inside world, and doing the work that you need to do to get rid of that part of you that thinks you actually need to have an outside purpose to be fulfilled. Because I don't think there's anybody that ever got what they want that achieved ultimate long-lasting fulfillment. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a great example. I've got two great kids. One of my daughters studied really hard. She wanted to become a lawyer. Studied really hard, did really well, got an honours degree, great, got offered some great jobs, took the job of her dreams. Well, two years later, she wasn't happy. Well, actually, after a year, she wasn't happy with it. So you've got two choices. You either accept it or you change. But she's actually, after another year or two, she changed and she loves this job. But there's still, I'm sure, things that she's not happy about. We're always wanting something else. And unfortunately, that is the human condition. And essentially, true freedom. And I used to think, when I was chasing money and possessions and things, I used to think true freedom was, if you said to somebody, what do you want? They'd go, ultimately, what do you ultimately want? They'd go, ultimately, I'd love to just be able to make enough money so that I could do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. Yeah, it's not a bad answer, but it's not going to buy you true what you really want, which is to be happy and fulfilled and feel joy and feel love. And so what you really want is to feel those things. And the history, even in the Bible, they talk about the story of Ecclesiastes, I think the Old Testament, where Ecclesiastes went out and did everything. Became a successful businessman. He was a womanizer, blah, 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 blah. Got to a stage where he said, this is not working, and went to God. So it's still the same story several thousand years later. So you've got to be very committed and firstly get that, that's what's holding you back, and strongly desire it and be committed to doing the work, because it is work. It is work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Spiritual chemotherapy. I love that term. Can you actually maybe share your experience of going through this spiritual chemotherapy?
Yeah, sure. Okay, sure. I'm happy to do that. So as I said to you, I pretty much could tick off. I had everything, mostly in life that I sort of ever wanted. I had a setback which started making me think, and then I became, really serious about wanting to find out and change and grow spiritually. And so I learned that essentially I was the cause of my own problems. And the essential problem is, we live on this tiny little planet in the middle of empty space. I saw the other day with fascination they'd send a new rover to Mars, and there ain't much there. We wouldn't like to be there. Unfortunately, most of us, particularly in the West, have everything, but we're not still happy either. And we're on this tiny little planet spinning around the sun in a solar system, basically in the middle of empty space. Scientists and physicists, tell us that 99.99% of the universe is empty space, and it's expanding and it's infinite. And we have everything we need to be happy. Why aren't we happy? And I realized that. And then after reading a number of the books, including, it's about Eckhart's books and other spiritual teachers. So it's about discovering your true self, which, and it's variously called spirit or soul. To go back to that quote, we're not human beings having the occasional spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. Some of us think we have a soul, or we've been taught we have a soul. No, that's not true. It's not you don't have a soul. You are a soul. So essentially we are spiritual beings, but we've lost our way with this focus on objects and thoughts being one set of objects, emotions being another set of objects, the body being another object, and of course outside objects. So I realized and was taught that if you want to find your true self, there's only one way, is to let go of the part of you that's stopping you doing that.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear this part. What was going through your life when you were that caused you to have this feeling of emptiness that made you want to seek out these books and spiritual guidance?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. So I'd always been a seeker and a searcher. I'd had some very tough experiences as a kid. I was very close to my father as a child. At the age of 8, my father got multiple sclerosis. He at about 11, he got terminal cancer and he passed away when I just turned 14. And it was a complete upheaval in my life. There was no counselling or anything like that. And it really did. It set me. So it just threw me for a loop, actually. I mean, for years. My grades went down. I started hanging around with the other kids that were in pain. And what do you do with it? You take drugs. So you look for relief. Basically, you're in pain, and you look for relief. And we find relief in drugs and alcohol. It's rampant. These days, it's an art form. Distraction from self is an art form. It's TV. It's streaming services. It's it's YouTube, it's food, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's like so many different things. And then I got my life back together. I put a lot of work into myself, and I got myself sort of back on the track and back on the track.
How did you get back on track? Like what made you?
That's a really good question. When I say back on track, I went away for a number of years, found out that wasn't the answer. Had some therapy, which helped, and then got into business, which was essentially, if I look back, an egoic distraction. So business is another one. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with business. Don't get me wrong. I'll say it again. If it wasn't for business and free enterprise and, the financial system and the economy and the way that we work and materialism, we wouldn't have been able to develop a vaccine for COVID as quickly as we had. There's big money in it, right? So let me put that out there, and that's going to help a lot of people, right? So I mean, but I'm not a greenie per se. I'm sure for the environment and sustainability and all that, of course, So But I started a personal growth journey. So I thought the answer for me is make money. Everybody, people around, it was sort of reinforced in my family. I came from a pretty successful family environment. And, you said, what do you do in the Western world? Do you get a good job, or so you can start a business and you can make money, and then you can, have a good lifestyle. So that's what I made the purpose of my life. I made the purpose of my life was to make money, acquire things, get some ego satisfaction, have other people thinking Phil's doing well, feel good about myself that I'm, advancing in life. And it worked pretty well. And I applied myself to that. I listened to a lot of people. I applied myself. I worked hard. I plowed through. I set goals, which eventually most of them, if not all of them, I achieved. And over the years, that was great, but it still wasn't. There were times when it just didn't work. And I noticed there was always something else. So you got a really nice house, but you wanted to live in the better suburb, which is around the corner, because that's more prestigious.
Looking back, did it seem like you went from one addiction in your 20s, like drugs and alcohol, to a different one?
Look, it's a really good question. Well, I was always brought up, as a lot of us are, that the purpose of your life is to do well, whatever that means. To do well is to achieve. You see, we live in an achievement-oriented society. So most of the gurus out there are teaching. Anthony Robbins says, I teach the art of achievement. It's about achieving. So that's how I was sort of taught up. And although I hit the basement because of my circumstances, I'd had enough conditioning and I guess enough desire and maybe smart enough to eventually, and enough desire and will to eventually raise myself back up and and get back into that journey, get back into that race. It's like I'd fallen over. The race is still going on, but Phil gets up. It's one of those feel-good stories. Phil's a long way behind, but he fills up. And so I applied myself, and I traced the dream that everybody's chasing: own your own home, marry, the right person, have the kids, put them in private schools, drive a nice car, take the good holidays. And that was the purpose of my life, which is the purpose of most of our lives in the Western world. Let's face it. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. And, there's a bit of religion thrown in, but, most people just do it to tick a box. These days, unfortunately or unfortunately, with the traditional religions, most people are just ticking a box. But, I had a number of setbacks, and I'd realized through looking back, in my past that what had happened, very unfortunate happened with my father, but in fact, it's life. It's a sad thing to happen, but it's life. And I didn't handle it very well. In fact, I handled it really badly in terms of just non-acceptance. There's nothing you can do. My father was a doctor, by the way. Mm-hmm. So if anything could have been done about those conditions, I'm sure he would have found it. But nothing existed at the time, and probably still doesn't. Maybe slightly better. But essentially, that's life. That's things happening completely out of your control that you'd rather not happen, and they do. And yes, we're human, and we're going to feel some sense of grief and sadness and loss. But, I way overplayed it, and essentially because I couldn't handle it. And I just became completely focused on my own sense of grief and loss and unfairness, and that's what I became focused on. So, as I said, what do you do when you're in pain? You go and find other people who are in pain, and so drugs is a great distraction, because essentially these things take you away from yourself. Alcohol is a great distraction. People, you go to any social situation, the first, would you like a drink? My stock standard answer is, oh, no thanks, I'm not thirsty. Why are you asking me if I want a drink? Because it's customary to have an alcoholic drink, because it relaxes you, because 9 out of 10 of you are not comfortable in this situation, because not even if with the people let alone the people you don't know. Do you get where I'm coming from? So we've got all this stuff going on in our own heads about, I hope they're not looking at me. Oh, God, no, that person's wearing the same suit. I went into a thing the other day, I was dressed a certain way, and I saw a guy who was dressed the same way as me. My first thought was, oh, my God, he's got exactly the same clothes on. And then because I do practice this stuff, I realized, what? that's just a thought, man. Let it go. So what? But, I know I let it go. I couldn't care less if everybody was dressed the same as me, quite frankly, now. So, yes, I'll have a drink. And the drink is just to loosen up your mind. It's like, well, what does the drink do? It relaxes you, but whatever it does, it lessens that focus on yourself, that self-consciousness, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
You focusing on these, I wonder what they're thinking of me type thoughts.
Yeah.
And so we make an argument. Sorry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your anxiety thoughts kind of diminish.
Yeah. What we call anxiety, but essentially what we call anxiety is essentially just a feeling, which is a stimulation of, I talked about before, those past experiences that we kept where something happened that, we weren't comfortable with or didn't like. We kept the energy of the experience, and then now we're in a new environment. It's triggering that experience. And we call it, say, in that example, and we call it anxiety. But essentially, it's just a feeling and a triggering of energy. It's a shame we label it. In the Western world, we have to label everything. So I've got anxiety, or I have PTSD, or I have depression. Now, I feel very sad for anybody that's in that situation. But essentially, unless it's really, chemically induced, for most of us, it's just a fixation on thoughts that are driving you mad.
It's like an extension of someone's egoic identity.
Egoic identity.
Of that, right?
The big mistake is knowing yourself as the ego. And as I said, the ego, I like to say the ego's henchman is the mind, and a neurotic, compulsive, personal thought. Here's, someone once said this, I can't remember who said it, but it's very true. The single problem we have that's causing all our suffering is that we never stop thinking about ourselves. Now, you get that and your world can change. There's work to do. That alone, the recognition of that, won't change your world. But it may, if it resonates, lead someone to think, you know what can I do about that? Because the mind, it has such a strong hold on our true self, which is, essentially where awareness, where consciousness, where connect, we're essentially, now this is pretty heavy, with permission to get a little bit deep here if I can.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, no, essentially, we are, we're all a creation of the Creator. Whatever religion you are, I respect it, but we're essentially a creation of the Creator, as is everything else. So we are essentially God witnessing this moment through us. Here, I've put you on this planet at this moment. Hey, look, do you want to be on Mars? There's nothing there. Or would you rather be here? Hey, trees, grass, sunshine, rain, snow, sleet. But, we have this fixation on ourself and how the way we have determined that life needs to be. That is the cause of suffering.
Mm. So how has your life changed since you've realized this for yourself?
Well, I now live in a really big home, and I'm only kidding you. I've got everything I ever wanted. I got a beautiful wife, a Ferrari out. Look, I've got a lot of that stuff, but no. How has my life changed? Dramatically, dramatically. I'm still a work in progress. I'm not going to tell you I'm not. My work is essentially to let go of that part of me which is having a problem with the moment. It doesn't mean I don't do stuff. It doesn't mean I don't speak up. It doesn't mean I don't take action. But it just means I do not want to be bothered by my own. I don't want to be bothered by my own personal egoic thoughts about myself and feelings all the time. So I am freer. I'll give you a couple of small examples. So the more of this, the more work you do by it's basically letting go and surrendering. There are words that a lot of us are familiar with, but not really familiar. It's letting go. Like this, so if you said, look, Phil, I'm really bored with this right now. I think you're a fraud, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to cut this thing. In the past, I might have go, well, hang on, Wing, how dare you say that? My ego is going to be offended. If you did say that, probably now it would come in. But there's not as much egoic stuff to get triggered anymore. So it would come in and it might disturb me a little bit, but my first thing would be to just, rather than focus on what you said and my own reaction, would be just to watch my reaction. So I said anxiety is a feeling, anger is a feeling, hurt, any type of emotional hurt is a feeling. I would just focus on that for a moment, allow it to pass. And then I would say, well, look, Wing, if it's not working for you, great chatting, see you later. I don't get as reactive. A very small example, I'm sitting at my desk at the moment. I had a huge pile of papers yesterday, and I went to lean over to something, and I spent an hour or so putting them together in a nice pile so I could action them. And I accidentally knocked them off my desk. Well, they went flying. Now, in the past, I would have had some, oh, no, anger, blah, blah, maybe blasphemed, swore, like nothing. No, something happened. I don't have as much of the personal reaction anymore. Subsequently, I'm just a lot freer to be in the moment and not suffer the ups and downs of life. In fact, I use life as my teacher. In fact, dropping those papers is a great opportunity there, if there is some stuff there, is to let it go. Because life is going to happen regardless of whether I like it or not. And I'm hardly in control of any of it. So why would I want to fight it? That's only creating problems for me. So subsequently to your question, I'm much less reactive. I handle things a lot better. Life seems to flow easier. Funnily enough, when you work on the inside, life seems to flow easier on the outside. Most of us are trying to work really hard to change the outside, but when you let go of your need for anything in particular, you might have an intention, but when you let go, and they call that attachment, most of us are familiar with that. When you really let go of your need for it to happen, you'd be amazed at what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel the same way since I started to let things go. Just let whatever will happen perfectly on its own, the way it does. So I want to ask you, let's talk about happiness. So since you've shed your ego, would you say
let me say this. Let me qualify it. I haven't totally shed my ego.
Right.
I'm 66, really I've been working from this for about 4 solid, really hard. Like if I also play, I sing in a band,
Mm-hmm.
rock band I did at 60. If I would have worked it hard at this, at my harmonica in 4 years, I'd be able to play anywhere, but I haven't. But I still have an ego and I still have a way to go. And there's not too many, even the masters and the saints, that wouldn't say, hey, listen, I'm not going to say I don't have an ego.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is it doesn't run my life.
Yeah. Did you have a profound experience of just surrendering completely? Or did you have process over time of it slowly shedding for you?
Mine's been through, firstly, recognition and wanting to change, which is, 90% of it is like recognizing that my ego, my mind, my body, emotions are getting in the way of me just enjoying the magnificence. We're only here for a very short time, enjoying this magnificence of this moment that's been designed the way it is. And who am I to argue with it? Let me just experience the joy of being here. So mine came from a recognition and a really strong desire to be unconditionally happy. So I use life to sandpaper the ego. So I use, and I'm not a perfect practitioner, but I do my best to use what happens in life to let go of the part of me that's having a problem with it. You discover your true self by letting go of your not true self. You find out who you are by letting go of who you are not. And the more I found I let go of who I am not, the more I experienced my true self. And the more I surrender, the better life is and the happier I am. So going back to your thing about purpose, most people's purpose is an external purpose. And it's a very big thing in the Western world these days because we don't have to worry about food. We don't have to worry about clothing. We don't have to worry about shelter. We've got them in spades. For instance, we've got so much food. There are cooking shows to show you how, contests to show you how to use it, how to make all these. We've got a surplus. Destroying the planet at the same time, mind you, but that's another point. But, so most people's purpose is external. But when I discovered that the true purpose of life is to let go of the ego part of you that is stopping you actually experiencing life, true life, which is the moment, not the way you want life to be, then that's a completely different ballgame. That is a state of peace and freedom.
So, yeah, talking about purpose. So, you've touched upon the inner purpose and the outer purpose. So, for people who are more curious about finding their outer purpose, what kind of advice would you give them?
Look, you've got to meet people where they are, Wing. So everybody's at a different stage of development, different stage of growth. And, like when I'm in my 20s, if I would have sort of heard someone like me talking about this, I would have probably turned it off.
Let's say as someone who's already in that self-awareness stage and they're seeking actively, but they're like, what is it? What is my purpose? I'm trying all these different things, but I don't know where to start and what to do. There's so many.
Okay, well, we essentially have one purpose. There's only one purpose. All roads lead to Rome. The one purpose in all our lives is to be happy. Everything everybody's doing is to try to be happy. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
For the most part, yes.
No, not for the most part.
I would expand on that to also.
Why does anybody do anything? There are two reasons. Why when you say for the most part, like why do you say for the most part?
Well, I think it's also important to talk about igniting your inner light and your love that's within you, which also leads to happiness.
Of course it does. Why would you want to? Why did I go? Why have I been on this journey? Because I wanted to be happier.
Right. Yeah.
So you can call it lighting your inner light or reaching enlightenment or nirvana or whatever you want to call it. But essentially, the spirit wants to grow and we want to be happy. We want to experience fulfillment. We want to experience growth and fulfillment and joy and happiness. That's essentially why we do pretty much everything that we do. In the Western world, as I said earlier, we've made an art form out of it. When I get this, I'll do that, and when I become enlightened. So, chasing enlightenment is just another form of ego. Chasing enlightenment is just another form of ego gratification. It's called actually spiritual ego. There's a term for it. Mm-hmm. It's called spiritual ego. So my advice for anybody is, people are where they are, and I respect anyone who is where they are. So, I stayed in my early 20s. It was a quest for money and prestige and, I guess, financial freedom. For other people, they might be there. If it's spiritual freedom and if you're sincere, there's any number of teachers that are great teachers. We are so fortunate. YouTube has all these teachers for free. If Jesus was going to do the Sermon on the Mount this afternoon, it would be on YouTube tomorrow morning. It's there for free, but you have to do the work, and the work is not easy. So we'll go to work every day to earn a living, and we'll put 8 hours or 9 hours in, blah blah blah. This is also work, and if you want to experience the light or your true essence, so the light is just another metaphor for your true essence, spirit. In different, call it soul or spirit. In Judaism, it's called neshama. In Hinduism, I think it's Atman. It's just a different name for the same thing. There's a spiritual energy, which is our true nature, and call it whatever you like, but it's essentially energy. Is if you want to experience that energy, then you need to let go of the part of you, be consciously aware when your mind and your emotions are starting to distract you into their game. It's like watching a television program, like a really scary movie on television. You can be fully sucked into it. And we've all had that experience where we're sitting on the couch or in the movies very comfortable, and like my wife's white knuckle digging her nails into my wrist, and I'm like, don't want to look. It's a scary movie. But if you put up the lights and turned off the music, you can watch the same thing and be like, well, what is all that about? That's not scary. So essentially, when your mind and your emotions, get triggered and they're taking, and you become fully distracted by that, you go in your own scary movie mostly. And so the practice is to lean away from it and let it happen and let it just go away, do its thing, so that you can now be experiencing the moment. So that's essentially deep spiritual practice. Meditate. Some people would say, well, I meditate. Meditation's a really good thing. But meditation is essentially just an awareness practice. So it's a practice where you become better at becoming aware of your thoughts. And, but it's not actually a very deep spiritual thing to do. But it is a great practice which will help you. So, if you read A New Earth or The Power of Now or any one of Eckhart's books or anyone else who's of note in spirituality, if you're looking if your true purpose is to be happy, to experience just the joy of being, if that's really your true purpose and you're ready for that, it doesn't mean you can't have other stuff, but I would say, find a spiritual teacher that resonates with you, one who teaches practices that work, that's not trying to take all your money, who's genuinely sincere, who resonates with you, and do the work, because it's work. It's like if you said to me, I want to be a great piano player, but I'm okay at the moment, but I want to be really good. Well, there's just only one way to get really good. Actually, the easiest way to get really good is?
What's that?
Find a teacher who's good, who resonates with you, who gets you, do what they tell you to do. And don't deviate.
Just simple as that, yeah. So
it is as simple as that.
What's like one practice that really worked for you personally?
The one practice that works for me, which essentially I think is the deepest practice there is spiritual surrender. So, and what is spiritual surrender? Well, it means many different things to many different people. But essentially, I've said it a few times on this chat, it's letting go. You have to be aware. So there's an awareness game here. Your true self is that aspect of you that is aware of, that you have thoughts when they happen, that you have you have an emotional reaction when it happens. In response to something that happens in the outside world. So true surrender is at first recognizing that everything happens because it's designed to be happening. Don't ask me why, I don't know. But everything is really the result of everything that's happened before that over the course of the beginning of the universe, maybe even before that. So is letting go of that. Firstly, like if you said, as I said, just to use an example, let's say someone says something that I don't like, that triggers. Someone says something in a particular way and my ego doesn't take it well. Now, I know it doesn't take it well because I can feel it. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
So I have two choices. One is to react, which is what most of us do most of the time. But I might be, one reaction might be smack them in the mouth. Well, some people do that. We could road rage. Some people actually get out of their car and try to beat you up, right? Other people might have a mild angry reaction and give you a finger. Someone else might toot their horn. Someone might shout at you. But if you want to be truly spiritual about that and you want to surrender, you let it go. So you let go of your own reaction. So in other words, you notice that there's a reaction coming up. Oh, this person is driving too slow. You notice there are thoughts like you want to hit your horn and speed them up because I got to be somewhere. But what's more important to you is being okay with life. So my practice is to try to do what I can to stay very aware, and I'm getting better all the time, of what's going on, and I just relax in the face of it. And what I do is I particularly relax the area around my heart where I feel the tension, which some people would call anger or frustration or anxiety or fear. I just relax. I consciously relax, and I notice the thoughts, but like with the movie, I turn on the lights and turn the music off. I don't identify with them. In other words, I don't make them me. I notice them. And then after a few seconds, that energy will pass. And now I'm free to react, but not from a egoic personal place of being triggered, but from a higher place of dealing with what's in front of me at the moment. And I just might decide, you know what? I'm more interested in listening to what's on the radio than tooting my horn. And I can tell you it's a much better place to be. And after a while, I've been doing it for a number of years, but it's still not automatic, but it's starting to become automatic. After a while, it's just a much more pleasant place to be.
Are there anything that you started doing since you were too fearful to do before, now that you've surrendered more?
Look, I've always been a pretty out there person and, gone and done stuff. So no, look, it's not about really letting go of fear and then doing something you were afraid of. It's not really about that, Wing. Sorry. See, it's not about trying to get anything. It's not about, look, I've been holding myself back. I really wanted to do this podcast and I've been fearful, but because I'm surrendering now, I'm doing the podcast. That might happen, but it's not about setting that objective for that to happen. There's a book that was written years ago called Fear Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, I think, or Susan Jeffries. A good book. But, it's really about, if there's stuff you're afraid of, well, just handle the fear and go and do it. But the spiritual practice is, you're not going to get what you truly want from going and doing it. You're going to get what you truly want from letting go of the need to want to do it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, yep.
I mean, it's not, because I now feel I'm more comfortable, I'm going to go and do that. I might not need to do that anymore. Whereas before I thought, when I put myself out and take a big risk and make another $1 million, I'm going to feel really great because I'm going to buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini and I'm going to leave it in the drive. As a joke the other day, I live in a very nice suburb, one of the best in, the country. My next door neighbor just bought a Lamborghini. As a joke, I saw her yesterday and said, "Can I borrow your when we have visitors? Can I borrow your Lamborghini and put it in my driveway?" It was a joke. It's not needing the Lamborghini, but you can still buy a Lamborghini because you like cars. But it's not needing the Lamborghini. So to your question, is there anything I've done? There's tons of things I've done, but it's not because I need to do anything in particular, not to need or have anything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. And now I would like to go to a lightning round where I'm going to ask you a bunch of short rapid-fire questions and you can just answer with one word or a sentence. What's one thing you like to do to relax?
Disidentify from my mind.
What's one thing you like to do for fun?
Participate.
What makes you enthusiastic?
A chance to make a difference, a chance to learn, a chance to grow, a chance to play.
Nice. What's one habit you are working on?
My diet.
What's one habit you would like to have?
So I'm on day 10 of a 10-day detox at the moment.
Oh, wow, nice.
But the habit I would most like to develop at the moment is just to be very mindful about what I put in my mouth from a food point of view.
Okay. If you're not doing what you are doing today, what would you be doing?
Doing what I'm doing today.
Nice. How would you describe your ideal life?
Like people ask me, how are you? And I say exactly how I'm supposed to be.
Nice. That's a great place to be. Yeah.
My ideal life is right now, Wing. If I gave you any other answer, you wouldn't want to podcast me.
Touche. How do you define purpose?
Well, as I said, true purpose is to experience your true self, your true nature, which is happiness, joy, love. It's the higher states. So my true purpose is to let go of the part of me, the egoic part of me, that's blocking that, and that's my work.
And lastly, do you have any last requests you would like our listeners to do?
Well, if any, I don't really have any requests, but if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy for them to do that.
What's the best way for them to do that?
Look, if somebody wants to email me on my personal email, it's leephil, LEEPHIL, at tpg.com.au, leephil at tpg.com.au. If anybody, hopefully some of this stuff resonated. If it didn't, please don't send me, poison pen letters, notes or anything like that. As I say, it's a journey and I'm just sharing my experiences here. So I wish everybody well, but I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you, Wing, and it's a blessing. And thank you very much. And you're obviously doing great stuff there.
And that's our episode. The key takeaway from this episode is that chasing after external things doesn't bring long-lasting happiness, as those things simply satisfy our ego, which is never truly satisfied. Instead, to find happiness, which is our purpose according to Phil, we should let our ego go so we can truly appreciate the present moment. Also, if you haven't already, you should definitely go read Eckhart Tolle's books, The Power of Now or A New Earth. They'll change your life. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like to support this podcast, please subscribe, tell your friends about it, and rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Please also follow A Work in Purpose on Instagram and join our group on Facebook. May your present moment, now and forever, be filled with light and love. Until next time, this is Wing, and you are listening to A Work in Purpose.